welcome back to the show. So glad you stopped by today because we have a fantastic guest who I'm honored to introduce you to, and her name is Vikki Downey. She is an author, educator, and entrepreneur with 3 decades, yes, count them, of experience as a police wife. Now, listen up because her husband, John, served in various demanding roles with the LAPD for 25 years. And together, they built a successful side business. While she was raising their children, Vikki created a six-figure income, reducing her husband's need for cash and overtime and allowing him to retire 9 years early. I'm sure you were excited about that, right? And
Yeah.
her debut book, hold it up there, come on, her debut book, A Police Wife's Journey from Sleepless Nights to Six Figures, offers practical advice and encouragement to first responders and their family. And Vikki, I just will say, is dedicated to resilience and community. And I'm so excited to hear from her today. Welcome, Vikki.
Thank you, Jill. So excited to be here.
Oh, you are amazing and awesome. I love your inspiration to others. And I know you actually have a new podcast called Dig the Well. Can you mention and tell us about that?
Yes, that's right. That's right. It's right there. Dig the Well. We just launched October 24th. My husband and I are doing it together. And yes, it has to do with being a police family because that's who we are, but it's mostly about entrepreneurship because what a lot of people don't know is we had a business right before we even got married together. And have always been entrepreneurs, raised kids in that philosophy of entrepreneurship. And so we talk about marriage and kids and how our kids are entrepreneurs as well. So it's all things on your entrepreneur journey and why you want to dig the well before you need the water. So
Yes, I love
excited.
that. And it's great. And it's an important concept. And, I know obviously as a first responder wife, you've had your share of challenges. Can you just say and let us know what's the hardest part about being a first responder spouse?
That's such a good question. Well, I think a lot of people, because I talk to a lot of people, and they immediately think the safety issue, the husband, that must scare us first responders to death ourselves. And honestly, that's not it. That's not the main concern. We know our officers are well trained. The main concern these days is, just the bad publicity. How funny. And you're all about publicity, Jill. The bad putting every officer in the same bucket as the bad ones, because we know there are bad doctors, there's bad lawyers, there's bad police officers. But I think that's the hardest part, keeping our mental attitude in the right place, and especially when 2020 hit. That's really why I decided to write the book, was I was tired of being quiet. I was tired of staying in the closet because we're kind of taught that as a police wife. Yeah, that's something else people don't know. We're taught to not tell people what our husbands do. In fact, my go-to work, if people said, "What does your husband do?" I would say he works for the city. Kind of funny, huh?
Oh,
He works for the city. And, of course, close friends knew, but what other people don't realize there is our safety matters. And if we're out in public and everybody knows what we do or what my husband does, there are bad people in this world, sad to say. And they could follow us home, they could target me or our kids. So, yeah, we're really taught to keep it quiet.
mhm.
And so this was a big deal to write the book and come out of the closet, but I'd kind of had enough with the hard part of being the spouse, wanting to support him and stand up for him. And finally, he gave me permission. He's like, absolutely. I think enough people know what I do after 25 years on the job. Go ahead, write the book. So that's the
Wow.
hardest part. Yeah, that really is hard.
And I think that's really new for many of us to understand and to know that you're not supposed to tell. That's really interesting. And
Yeah.
you're right, mostly we would think about safety. And I'm just glad that both of you are safe, and knowing both of you, I can see why. And I also know that, you're so dedicated to helping others. One of the things that you know about is overcoming loneliness and money struggles. What did
Yeah.
you do to overcome that?
Yeah, well, we could tackle the loneliness first. That's probably the most crippling if you let it be crippling for a police wife because it's a real thing. You marry the man of your dreams and you're thinking, "Oh, we're going to have such a great life together." And we do, but him being on duty a lot, that's normal. We knew that, but didn't really expect all the overtime, the later rests, the report writing that then leads to more overtime after the late arrest. We get the texts all hours of the night, I'm gonna be late. And then also when you have an event planned with the family and the husband gets called in for mandatory overtime, something's going on, especially in a big city like Los Angeles. He'd get called in and when we had plans. And then there I go again. I'm not feeling sorry for myself at all, but there I go off to the event without him when all the other families, have their husbands there. So that is hard. And I had to really dig down deep and do a lot of self-care, realize that self-care isn't selfish. And I had to understand that, okay, there were times when the kids were awake, but I was exhausted from being the solo parent basically, because if he was home, he was sleeping and then off to work again. And so I would have to say, guys, mommy's going to take a nap. And so
Yeah.
I got really good at setting boundaries with our own kids. And my naps were like 20 minutes. I wasn't one of those moms that was sleeping for hours. But I just needed some quiet time for me, but I had to realize that was okay.
Yeah.
Then also doing fun things that I knew John could care less about with the kids, where then I didn't feel guilty that I was getting to go to do the movies, for example. He's not a big movie watcher. So I would take the kids to the movies and we would make the best of it without daddy there, even though we wanted him there. All those things where I worked on my mindset. I read a lot of personal development on marriage and all that good stuff. So I think that is the first thing a police wife has to learn to deal with, and is the loneliness.
And I
Finance. Oh,
if
yeah,
I
go ahead.
let's just expand that to any first responder. And how about
Yeah,
generally people in marriage? I think many of us could relate to that at times, being lonely, or you're not quite on the same schedule as your spouse, or they don't
yeah,
like the same things, and that it's okay to go out with
right.
yourself and your kids and your friends. I love
Yeah,
that point, Vicki. And what about the
yeah,
money
and
struggles?
right, you're not being it is for and a lot of people have told me after reading the book, your tips in there were for every wife, not just every police family or first responder, and it is true. I think we learn to just be okay with being on our own and with the kids, if you have kids, and not having the angry look on your face when he gets home, because of course, he doesn't want to work as long as he's working. So don't take it out on him. Have a happy look on your face. Don't dump all your problems from the day on top of him. In fact, I taught myself to listen to him first. I tried to be kind of unselfish that way, even though part of me wanted to dump all my problems. Do you know what they did here? Do you know what they did there? But, once he felt like he was free to share about his day, then of course he always asked me, what do you and the kids do? Tell me about your day. So, it's kind of an interesting learning experience, that's for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
for all wives to think about.
Oh, for
Yeah.
sure.
And then finances, I've talked to a lot of women that when they're married, they hide things from their husband money-wise. And I just don't think that's a good plan. I really don't. I mean, I get getting your nails done and not always, having to discuss every little thing and not feeling guilty about getting your hair or your nails done if it fits in the family budget. But keeping big secrets, I don't think is a good idea. So, what I did to overcome the guilt, because believe me, I actually was raised with, I don't know why, but my mom, I don't know if it was taught to her or what have you, but doing hair and nails and whatever, maybe a massage, some kind of self-care. I was kind of taught that was selfish. And I've
Mhm.
learned that it's not. It's recharging my battery, right? And so, to overcome that even thought creeping in, I thought, well, you know what? I'm not going to take money from the family budget. I'm going to start a side business and then create the income and I'll spend that money instead of the family budget and then start contributing to the family budget from my side. So that was a biggie for me, starting a side business, whatever, whatever business you start, just stick with it and start making some great income. It's slow at first, of course, as you're building, but it's going to start bringing in more as long as you don't give up, as long as you keep going after it. And but a lot of wives don't do that. So that's one of my biggest tips is start something on your own then. If you feel like the budget isn't there, why not? You know,
And I love that you did that, that you started, that you've become very successful. And
yeah.
just to reiterate that actually John was able to retire at 9 years early because of the cash that you've created. And I love that. And I feel that that may be part of your legacy. But what do you feel your legacy to the world is?
Ah, wow. I mean, it's so funny, Jill. I think back, it was probably 20 years ago now, and I was about 38. So it was about 20 years ago. And I don't know if it's for all women. Maybe that was a time you might have had that thought, but I remember thinking, okay, I've made my impression on the world by having my children. I have some great friends, but truly, if I were gone tomorrow, what's going to be my legacy? I had that kind of epiphany come to mind, and I thought on it, dwelled on it, prayed about it, meditated on it because it was a really strong feeling. And I don't know, is that kind of did you have a time in your life where you felt that too, Jill, or was it just is that just me?
No, I actually, think about my impact a lot and
Yeah.
probably, weekly, sometimes monthly, it depends on the month and the time of my life in that moment. But I think it's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing.
Yeah, and so I remember that, and that's right about we had multiple businesses, like I mentioned. We started a business when before we were married, and it was an automotive accessory store. Not very exciting for me. It was really my husband's deal. It was fun, it was lucrative, definitely roller coaster, just like every business is. There's peaks and valleys. We ended up having to close that, and then I was a teacher. I put my college degree to work. But then that's when it was about I was turning 38, and I remember thinking, "Gosh, if I was gone tomorrow, what legacy truly am I leaving?" And that's when I just decided to start another business that was empowering to women in particular who felt disempowered, right? Maybe at home, not being able to do the things you want to do because you barely making ends meet on one income, two incomes, whatever it is, it's a lot of times you're barely making it on two incomes too. So I started a business and it was a candle business. And I really saw the ability to empower other women in my same situation that, definitely, single women for sure. That's kind of a given, empowering single women, but married women that still didn't feel like they were making ends meet with the income. They weren't really making an impact besides their own family. So my legacy really is to continuing to empower women of all types. But of course, I am a first responder, a police wife. I really have that focus now going forward to empower them to contribute to society, to start a business that has meaning and purpose, that gives back and also helps their own family and then leaves a legacy for if you do have kids. I want to leave a legacy for our kids to then expand on as well. So,
I love that. I love that, and you do that. I know you personally, and see you, and you have such a beautiful presence and impact and willingness and wantingness to make a difference, and I know you've been doing it through that, and I know our listeners are gonna wanna connect with you, so what do you have that they can stay connected to you?
yes. So you can directly book a call with me if you'd like to jump on a Zoom. I do coach couples in business, but also just women in business. And that patient to book that call with me is callwithvikki.com. And I know I'm pretty sure that once the podcast is listed, I also have a free gift for you where it's a time management planner for you. So I know I've given that to your people, Jill, so I'm sure that'll be in the comments because it's kind of a long name.
Yes, that is
My
perfect. That
my
is
little
perfect. Vicky, thank you. Thank you as always for who you are and all of your wonderful comments today. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Jill. Thanks for having me.
You're
Have a
so
blessed day.
welcome. You're so welcome. And thank you, everybody, for checking it out and appreciate you. Keep being kind. Check out my kindness circles and very much appreciate you. Look at jilllublin.com and let's stay connected. And I'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.